Hello there, it's Carrie Rhodes here. Welcome back to the Trinity Stamps YouTube channel. Today I am going to be paper crafting but making something for home decor. I'm going to start out with these diamond layered stencils using fossilized amber and rusty hinge on some peach cardstock. That's going to be the background for my piece today. So I'm just taping a 6x9 piece of cardstock to the back of stencil A. There are 3 stencils in this set, layered A, B, and C. I'll use all 3 today, and I'm starting with the rusty hinge ink, just using a traditional foam style blender, which is what I prefer for Distress Oxide ink, and filling in each of those diamonds. And it's going to give me the first layer of our background, and the next stencil I can apply a different color to and have a really cool Argyle type look. So here is what it looks like after stencil A. Looking pretty cool, and you can see already how you can layer these up. So I take stencil B, it's going to line up in between the diamonds that I already stenciled, and I can add in my second color of fossilized amber. And look at that, just the diamonds alone look so cool together. Now this one you can stencil on the open spaces in between those diamonds. I have offset the stencil a little bit, and I am going to do some faux stitching with a Sharpie marker. Now you can get the coordinating plate and die cut little stitch lines into this pattern. You actually would want to use the die first and then do the stenciling. I wanted to have use of the entire panel, and that die that does the stitching is more like a 6x6 size, I believe. So therefore I thought I would just do some faux stitching and have that stencil C, be my guide. So then I can rotate that and do the stitching. Now first I did the stitching down one side, and you can see it only goes through the orange diamonds, and that's what I want when I flip this over. I just want the lines or the faux stitching to be going through only the orange diamonds. And if you wanted it to go through both, you could do the stitching along both sides of that stencil, like above and below the stencil, where I'm only doing it like above that line on the stencil, if that makes sense. But there I feel like with an open diamond and one with stitching, it looks more Argyle. Okay, I have the A7 embossed edge rectangle die set. So when you die cut a rectangle with this, it's going to give you an embossed line into the edge for a really cool finished off look. And so I've cut the middle out of this, and I need to trim away just a little bit of that paper because the stencil self is 6x9, but really it's about 8.5 by 5.5 with the pattern itself. So I just trimmed a little bit off of that, and I'm going to mount it onto a piece of cardstock that is 6x9, but I'm going to cut the center out of it first to give me a layer to put that middle piece on. So now I can layer these up. I've got an outer frame and my inner like panel that I'm going to put a stamped image on. So this is the Filled with Love stamp set. You can see it's this image right here with the envelope and all the leaves coming out. I'm stamping mine with VersaFine Onyx black ink and embossing it with clear powder on some watercolor paper. And it also has a sentiment that I am going to use on my project today as well. So let's go ahead and melt that powder. It's going to get all raised up and shiny, and I like the raised up edge so I can do some watercoloring. So just melting that with my heat tool. It takes a little bit longer, I find, on watercolor cardstock because the paper is so thick. So just be patient as you emboss, and then it's time for the watercoloring. So I have a watercolor brush that I love. I went out and bought myself a little bit nicer watercolor brush, not something like super duper expensive, but just something a little bit nicer. I don't know much about watercoloring. Like what I learned about watercoloring, I learned in art class in high school, and that was a few years ago. But I am wetting my paper with my brush first and then adding in some color. I can go back and layer on some darker shadows if I want later, which I will do. But I just have fun watercoloring. I am not by any means an expert on this. I'm not teaching how to watercolor today at all, but what I always like to say is if you enjoy it, you should do it and have fun with it. And if learning more about it and becoming an expert makes you happy, you should do that. But if you just want to watercolor some of your stamped images on occasion, like just go for it. Just have fun with it. So I'm just going to do some fall colors on here. Orange, yellow, some green, and like a really rich red and kind of a rusty brown color. So I figure this is going to go really well with my background that I made, and plus it'll have a little bit of the green, a little bit of the red. It'll go really good. So I just enjoyed spending the time watercoloring this. It's kind of like soothing to watercolor, I find. I don't know about you, but I really feel like it's relaxing. And so that's why I have this greatly sped up for you, because I was just chilling, enjoying myself and painting away. And then I will do a little bit of color on the envelope itself, just to give it a little bit of a shadow. And I'm going to mix together a couple colors and really water it down to give myself like a really soft, light, translucent brown for that. Here you can see I'm just adding in a little bit of shadow on some of those leaves there. And here's that really, really light brown. Now, now that I look at the finished product, I would like to darken up the shadow underneath those leaves a little bit. But overall, I really like how it turned out. So there is a coordinating die to die cut this out. So that's what I'm going to do. I will use the die to die cut out an additional plain piece so I can layer those up and have it stick up off of my background a little bit. Speaking of my background, I brought in some more Distress Oxide ink and Vintage Photo, and I'm going to really darken up the edge of this panel, and that's going to really help it be like the focal point of this project. Plus, I just love Vintage Photo, and I like things to be a little bit shabby, a little bit I don't know if antiqued is the right word, but maybe. So when I spritzed the ink that was on my mat to clean it up, I decided, let's go ahead and splatter some onto the background. And so I'm just picking that up with my scraggly little brush and tapping it on the edge of an acrylic block, and I'm getting these nice big splotches. Now, I let it dry for a little bit and I still had some really wet areas, so I'm just picking up any excess water at that point, and oh my goodness, it looks so amazing. I'm going to set that aside and work on the sentiment, which I am embossing on some vellum this time, also using that VersaFine Onyx Black ink and clear powder. So I will press that down, but not too hard, because this is a really like thin line and I don't want to make that kind of squish out when I stamp down. Then the clear powder goes on, and I did use an anti-static powder tool before I did any of my stamping, which helps the powder not stick to where it's not supposed to, but sometimes it does. That doesn't make me very happy. Okay, so I am putting the sentiment on this panel, but I am wrapping it around the back to where I have some double stick tape and just pressing the edges of my vellum onto that. You can see it here, and I can just fold that over and it will stick down really well. And I also brought in this crease tool to make sure that it was stuck down really well. All right, so here's the extra die cut piece. I'm going to glue these two together, and actually I decided to go ahead and bring in a third piece to make it really stand up off my project. So I'll only show you one, but I did actually do three. Isn't it so pretty? Oh, I love it. Okay, so once all three of those are glued together, I glued that down to the top of this panel, and then I put some glue on my finger, and I'm going to rub this on the back of the vellum and then press that down, and rubbing it and spreading it out is going to help it be a little bit more invisible. I just felt like the vellum was puffing out a little bit too much. Okay, let's move on to our next layer of the background. I have my two-way glue pen and some, I think this is sun-kissed copper gilding flakes, and oh my goodness, it is so much fun to play with. Now, if you're a crafter, you have to not mind getting a little bit messy every once in a while in order to do this. It's a little bit messy. However, the results are so cool. I don't know what it is, but I really like it. Plus, if you do play with this, just get yourself a little Swiffer and swift all that away, and it really helps clean up the mess. All right, so I glued that onto its layer, and then I can take my top layer, only putting glue on the edges because, you know, the center is open, so be mindful of that if you do this technique where you cover up the hole. And then it's time to embellish with these super cool leaves. This is a new mix, and they are iridescent. So in this light, a lot of them look kind of purple, but when you turn them in the light, they kind of pick up what's around them and can look more reddish. So I just thought they were really fun, like kind of look like they're spilling out of that envelope and floating down on my panel here. Now that piece on the front, that could totally be a card front, a like 5x7 card front. But for mine, I'm going to set this on my mantle. This is a clipboard that I have had for years and years and years, and on occasion I like to make a new piece to put on it and set it out with my decor. And so it's kind of fun to have something that I made on there. And this is like the third Thanksgiving one that I've made, or like fall themed actually. So I must really like my fall decor. But I tied a bow into a piece of ribbon that I just had in my stash. I thought it would go well. I don't tend to buy very much ribbon anymore, and I have enough in a few colors to get me by. So that was like the finishing piece on my little easel clipboard. Now you could put this in a frame. You could buy just like an easel and stick it on there. Whatever you wanted to do if you wanted to create a decor piece like this. But I had so much fun making it, and it's going to make me smile every time I see it to have a little piece of my, you know, paper crafting out in my decor. I love that. Do you guys do that? Do you make home decor projects with your paper crafting stuff? I would love to know what you make if you do. So leave that in the comments below. If you'd like more inspiration, you can find Trinity Stamps on Instagram and Facebook too. They're linked for you below, as well as all the products I used today. I'll see you all again very soon. Happy stamping. Bye.